What's up, everybody? It is your boy Marshulartz back here with another video, and I am happy to say it is finally coming out.
Finally, some action!
Yes, the long-awaited Animarathon March of last year of 2022 video, or March of this year actually, of 2023. We went to my first con in a long time, went to my first anime con in a long time, Animarathon out in BGSU, which is in Bowlin Green, Ohio. I hosted my very first panel there, and I'm proud to say that it went relatively well. Now, we had about 20 people show up all together. There was a bunch of intervals of people coming and going, but there were definitely some key people who said they got some news out of it, and that's what we're here to show you today. Now, just a little update. I have been doing a lot with Lumebento, and you can find the link to the website down in the description below, so be sure to check that out. Be sure to subscribe to this video and hit that bell to stay notified. There are going to be more videos coming out like this. I have tons of tutorials in my head and written down, and I am currently getting back into the groove of doing things for YouTube. Be sure to go follow us over on our YouTube channel, Lumebento, as well. But besides that, let's get started. Bow.
Oftentimes people, that is the number one thing I see on YouTube, is the number one thing I hear people say, are you smart enough? And the short answer to that is yes. Everyone in here is smart enough, capable, and able to create a story, okay? But before we get into that, I definitely want to go into the early beginnings of my life and why I'm here telling you this presentation, why I feel I need to do this. First off, I was extremely nervous to even apply for something like this and feel like wasn't capable to teach people until I had some people that I talked to from my industry days when I was working. Now, to start off, that's not my drawing, but that is how I did draw back in like 3rd grade, 2nd grade. I started drawing because I was really inspired at that time. I want to say it was like 2002, 2001. We were inspired by like Digimon, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh! Those were like the top things. Dragon Ball Z, Naruto, and all that stuff hadn't come out yet. So we were inspired, and that's pretty much what I did. That's not my drawing once again. But I mainly drew, and my friend mainly wrote, because I'm dyslexic, and writing is just terrible for me. But I still give it a try. Go ahead and get the next one. So past that, you fast forward. So in middle school and elementary school, I mainly drew. I focused all my talent on drawing and creating stories. It's just something I knew I wanted to do as a young kid. In high school is when I had to read a book, when we had to make a story on it. Now, obviously we've all had to do that, film a little project or whatever for English class. This is when I started getting into filming, and I don't know what it was about working in groups of people that just like made electricity run through my brain, but I really enjoyed it. And from that, I got to work with people like Hobson, I got to work with people like Dizzy Wright, I got to work with people like Logic. I didn't work with Logic directly, but I was in the same area, on the same team, doing some stuff with him. I got to work with G-Eazy, I got to work with Futuristic, and I got to work with Jack Harlow. These are just some people in the music industry I got to work with, and I also did some filming short film projects, personally for myself and with other people here in Toledo, and it was just a blast, and I learned a lot, not only from these people individually, but just even from my earlier years. So, who is Javon/Marshulartz? That is me. My name is Javon Harris, but online I go by Marshulartz, and I'm an illustrator. I am a no. You're okay. Go ahead. It's the. I am a concept. It is a dude. I am a concept artist, and I am a comic creator. My comic currently has over 8K views, which I know we've seen plenty of stories that have way more than that, but this is just me showcasing my skills, my talent, where I'm at. It's very doable. Anyone in this room can do it. And I started doing this, most of this stuff, creating the comics and stuff, I've been doing since I was young, but this story, Brave Soul, I created April of last year. And it already has this many views. I have 2 chapters out, with my 3rd chapter coming out April 5th.
Where can we find this?
I was just about to tell you. I appreciate that.
Okay.
I appreciate the enthusiasm.
Yeah.
You can find that on Global Comics, which I'll get into a little bit in a second or later on. But Global Comics is much like Tapas, Webtoons, Wattpad, anything like that. It's a free place where anyone can upload their story to. So going into my illustrations, I've been doing illustrations for about 2 years almost. I've been a concept artist with a video game company, more so the writer than the concept artist, but I've been doing concept art for myself and them for about 2 years as well. So it hasn't been that long. Just saying, you guys can do too. Next one. A few more things about me. I have a YouTube channel. And I apologize for just blandering you guys with like everything, but this is just so I can say my accolades and then we can get into the storytelling. But going into my YouTube channel, I go by Marshulartz, at the real Marshulartz. I only have 145 subscribers. I haven't been doing it super long. Once again, just showcasing like, hey, this is what I do. On my YouTube, I give tutorials on how people can draw the program, Clip Studio Paint, because that's what I use.
Yes.
You can use Procreate, you can use anything else, you can use anything like that to put your art or put your story on webtoons, Tapas, things of that nature. Go to the next one. Like I said, Mithrin is the game that I'm working on. I mainly do a few things from it, and I do the writing, the storyboards. I do the writing mainly. I do help with storyboards, some animations and animatics, and I do concept art, just like what I showed earlier. So yeah. All right, what you will learn, that it is possible to post anywhere you want. You can just hit 3 times, I think, on this one. Webtoons, Tapas, Wattpad, and Global Comics. There should be one more on this piece of Global Comics. Those aren't the only 4 places. I'm pretty sure everybody in here knows where they can post a story, where they can write something. Wattpad is mainly for writing. I've read a lot of stories. I was introduced to it by my lovely girlfriend in the back there who is cosplaying. And she introduced me to Wattpad, which has a lot of great stories. I didn't even know about it until last year. But I did post on Webtoons 2 years ago. I felt that it wasn't really a spot for me or my story. And I did post on Tapas as well. Felt the same way. Global Comics is the best place for myself. You have to find out where you like to post. Go ahead and go to the next one. All right, first things first. Developing your story. Now, this comes in a lot of ways. You can go to the next one. When you develop your story, you really want to keep an open mind during the creation phase and study successful source material that you are fans of. Now, I know that is definitely self-evident. You're going to be like, yeah, of course I know this. But sometimes you need to hear it. Sometimes it needs to be said to you because a lot of times you will study other things that you're not even fans of that are successful. I know people who don't like Chainsaw Man, but they're like, oh, I gotta create something like this. Or I gotta create something like a Naruto or One Piece. You don't have to. Go look at the movie Mulan if that's your favorite thing and figure out why that's great and then create a story going from there. This isn't an ironclad rule, but it will help push the boundaries of what you can do. And that's just a fact. Because a lot of times we will have a closed mind on what we can create and what we can do, and we won't really push what we want to do. We won't really push past what we have created. Hit it again, please. This cap off. I feel like I'm going to be drinking a lot more water than I think. So, we have the French manga artist Tony Valente, who creates Radiant, who's his huge inspiration is One Piece. He also likes Digimon, which I know we were talking about that earlier. And his story involves like some monsters / adventure stuff. Now, he felt that he only had to stick to shonen, that he couldn't have love in his story, but because a lot of shonen stories don't have any love or don't have like a lot of relationship stuff in there, or you don't see it to the end, but him being a French manga artist, it was very hard for him to tap into the industry, but he was able to do it. And he was able to do that by pushing past the boundaries of what he knew and what he understood about storytelling. Be careful of the coddling phase. Speaking of, you guys might see some like misspellings in here. I apologize about that. I didn't say coddling before, but it said like coddling or whatever. But yeah, be careful of the coddling phase. This is when you hold on to an idea like a golden egg, and a lot of people do that. A lot of people will be like, oh, this is my baby. I have to hold on to this. No, you can't see it. You can't see it either. You're gonna steal it from me. That's not exactly true. I might see your idea and get inspired and create, be like, yo, I know how you can push the boundaries on this. I know how you can make this even better. There's been plenty of times, like Masashi Kishimoto has a twin brother. Masashi Kishimoto is the creator of Naruto. He has a twin brother named Seishi Kishimoto. There was a panel in the Sasuke retrieval arc that he had drew, and his brother had told him, you know, I don't really think this is it. I think you gotta change this up, man. And he ended up changing it up and ended up becoming one of like the panels that was most used in AMVs back in the day when people were making AMVs. So don't be afraid to ask your friends, ask your family, if something in your story, if you feel like you have this golden idea, don't be afraid to ask people, to ask them saying, hey, you know, is there anything that you think I should change? It doesn't mean you have to change it. It just means that they might see something a different way than you do. And that's all it is. No ideas off the table. Everything has been done, so make sure to draw or write because you can go back over everything. Edit or redraw things. And I say that because it's very true. Literally just said that. Nothing is off the table. You can rewrite everything. You can repost most things. I won't say everything, because some places you repost to and they're like, well, you lost all your views and everything is gone. You're like, crap. But for the most part, yeah, you're good. Just make sure to know that you can erase and you can redraw. You will get better and your stuff will improve. Like these two drawings are drawings that someone did, and they were probably thinking the same thing that most people think. Oh, this is awesome. This is great. This is amazing. A few months later, it looks like that. And they're like, what the heck was I even drawing? Like, what? And it's the same thing with your writing. These aren't mine, by the way. These aren't mine. But it's the same thing with your writing. Your writing can improve, your spelling can improve, your grammar can improve, unless you're like me and you decide to ignore all that because your art skills are better than your writing skills. Good. Before we really begin, because I know we kind of got into this, there are two things I like to call people, and I realized this after my brother who went to Full Sail University was telling me this. He said there are pantsers and there are plotters. You have to decide what you are. And there are people who fall in between. Now, I fall into the pantser one. I do everything by the pants of my seam. I literally will draw my story as I'm writing it, and I can't help but to do that. Like, there are people who are like, dude, don't you want to figure everything out? I'm like, I don't care. I'm going to figure out what my characters are doing on the way as I go. It's kind of like hopping in your car and deciding where you're going to go to eat. You just haven't decided yet. You're like, am I going to go eat at a food court or am I going to go to McDonald's? Then there's people who are plotters. They need to know everything. Every little nook and cranny. They have to know the beginning, middle, and end of their story. They have to know how someone is going to die in the last arc and how that's going to affect the second arc, and they have to go back and forth. Before they actually continue, or before they actually start their story, they have to do that. That's not me. I can't do it. And I know it's not me. I don't. I just like pointing you guys out. Okay. Hello? Please don't harm us, ghosts. All right. Create compelling characters. Understand that your protagonist and antagonist, I shouldn't say need to be relatable, but for the most part, in most stories, need to be relatable. How is your main characters relatable, and how is your antagonist relatable? What struggles do they both have, and who is the supporting cast for both sides? If you look at any story, wait a minute. If you look at any story, there you go. You have Naruto, Sasuke. We'll just use this because most people know this. You have the Akatsuki, not just Pain. I know I used him, but the Akatsuki. Then you have the supporting cast. Okay? Naruto. Sorry, excuse me. My nose is stuff. I apologize.
It's the ghost.
It's the ghost effect. Naruto's the main character. Sasuke becomes an antagonist. And then when those two kind of join up, then you have the Akatsuki who comes in and kind of sidelines everything. But you always have a supporting character. Why is Sasuke just as much a protagonist as Naruto? These are the things I want people to think about. When you have those characters, if you have a character who's like, yo, this is a good guy, this is a bad guy, why are they both the hero in their own right? Exactly. They do have conflict internally. Everyone has that, even us sitting in this room. Why are you the hero in your story? Why is your best friend the hero in their story? You guys just happen to meet up. We're not going to bring Sakura into this because everybody knows how useful she is.
Well,
But
there's one thing that you didn't say.
what did I say?
We talked about this. I'm the hero in my story, but I am the hero in their stories. Like, when I put my story out there, am I a hero to you too, or am I just a hero to myself? That's the selfish.
And that all goes into this. That all goes into this. Go ahead to the next one. Big note. Make the villain not simple, twirling mustache villain. Unless you really want that, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. But give them their own life backstory and flaws if this applies to your story, like I said earlier. You don't have to do this, but it's just good. Do not make them evil for the sake of being evil. I can't tell you how many stories I have read. Just a little side tangent. Last year, I remember I had got sick with COVID, and I was asking people like, hey, send me your stories. This is when I was posting more on Webtoons. I had over like 180 people send me their stories. Like, guys, I ain't gonna lie, I'm not gonna read everything, but like, I'll read as much as I can. I read about 60 or 65 stories this year. Every single one had the twirly mustache villain that I did not understand why they were bad. I couldn't understand it. It was like the heroes were like, yeah, we're riding up in here, we're gonna save the day, and the bad guy's like, well, you thwarted my plans. And the heroes were like, you're dang right we did. And I'm just like, what was your plan? What did they thwart? Like, who? What is happening? Didn't know. And that was like for like at least 40 or 50 stories that I read. Not bashing on their story, but it's just thinking about what the story entitles, what the characters are doing, whether they're good or bad. In One Piece, the Marines are the good guys, but they're portrayed as the bad guys. It's just how the story works. The pirates are the bad guys, but we only really see pirate action from like Luffy and them crew, and like, hey, we're gonna save these guys because they fed us pizza, and you're like, all right, cool, that's a reason enough. Same thing if you look at Fullmetal Alchemist. Scar, he starts off as an antagonist. You understand what the military in that show did to the Ishbalans. They killed a lot of them. Scar has a right to be angry and want to take him out, but then later on joins. And it's not just sudden. You figure out why. The best example, Zuko. Everybody in who's seen Avatar. We all understand why Zuko had inner turmoil, like you were saying. Literally, he just wanted honor at first, and he's like, man, I have to get my father's honor back, and we really see what that means to him, even though we in our brains are like, this guy is despicable. This guy's all, why would you want to get his honor back? But it's not us. It's us looking at Zuko's actions. So when I say be careful making a twirly mustache villain, unless you really want to, it's okay, there's nothing wrong with that. Give them a backstory. Make them a hero. Tell us why they're a hero in their own story.
Would you consider Jack Horner to be a twirly mustache villain?
You would, Keith.
No, because even though we don't know too much about his backstory,
All it was he literally just wants everything in the world to himself.
that's the thing. Some people, just like what they said, I think in The Dark Knight, or I don't know which Batman movie, some villains just want the world to burn. That was a Dark Knight? Okay, thank you. I thought I was right. But yeah, some people just want the world to burn, and that's okay too. Yeah.
So like, basically, he thinks like so everyone's like as crazy as he is, and he just wants everyone to basically stop him.
Exactly. Some people just want the world to burn. Some people are like, yo, we have inner chaos, which means everybody has to have it. Like with Joker. So, yeah. And then in the case of Shaman King, Yo and Hao Asakura, one brother's evil, one brother's good, but one brother's pretending to be good. And that's Yo. Sorry if I spoiled anything, but not really.
Hey, remember, I don't want to show my card here. One of them has ultimate powers and can do what the hell they want. I mean, can do what they want.
Yeah. Yeah.
He can do whatever. He can, so. That's a good story. That's all.
It is. It's a really good story.
Such a good series.
You can get the next one. What's up, man?
Are you watching the original or the remake?
Okay, good. If you're watching the new one, it speeds through everything, which is fine too. But like, it's like 3 episodes or 1 episode, and you're just like, yo, I just had whiplash. What is
We
happening?
got TikTok we have TikTok, YouTube short attention spans now.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. They got it shows everything. Now we're getting to the fun part, world building. It's not hard.
It's not hard.
It just takes some time, and if you understand what it is you're going for, I promise you it's not hard. I promise you. It's more so tedious because there's so much to it. And you have some places that are like sandboxes, and you have some places that are like, wow, I can't take a step in this sandbox because there's so much here to like digest. Hit the next one for me. What are the places in your world? Different races and organizations. The world building is the one of the most important things when creating your story. Making your world feel like it's lived in. And the things are happening in the background while your protagonist is progressing in the story can oftentimes help you foreshadow. There was a lot there. I apologize for not having this memorized. But the reason why I say these things is because when your world is lived in, okay, we all have family, whether we like them or don't. We know that they're living their life doing something in the background while we're trying to focus on our job, our car, our health, schooling, whatever. The point is that they're doing stuff in the background, and then 3 weeks later you get a call from them and they're like, hey, I need you to come over and help watch Romeo. And you're like, why am I doing this again? Like, it just things happen. And then they have to tell you a story as to why you have to do this. The same thing applies in your stories that you write. There's nothing different. I learned this through filming. I learned this through everything that I was telling you about earlier, is that you can help foreshadow events too by cutting away. And we see this oftentimes in anime. They'll cut away sometimes and showcase what's happening to like the main villain, the other antagonists, the supporting cast. Maybe somebody's dealing with inner turmoil in the supporting cast and they're getting ready to gear up to be a villain later on, you know? We've seen that countless numbers of times. Okay, this one's kind of funny, and I was actually talking with my girlfriend about this earlier. This is from Jujutsu Kaisen 0. This obviously came out after the show, but there are people that I know who are new to anime who watched this first and then went to the regular show. They're like, whoa, this, like, Itadori's in the same predicament as this guy. I'm like, yeah, but it was backwards, but like, we're not gonna get into semantics. But like, it's just interesting to see that. Same thing with this one. This is from a good shoujo that I like. These two are in love. They met once before, but they don't know they're gonna meet again. And that's like something that's foreshadowed, and this is in the beginning. There you go. And then this is from another, I wanna say seinen manga I like, where the girl just wants to be friends with guys. And she finds that hard because she is attractive, and all the guys are like, hey, you know, we wanna kind of date you, but like, you never want to dance. She's like, I just want to have friends that are guys too. Little does she know that they're going to become best friends, and they're going to do some cool stuff together, and they get into arguments all the time, but like, it foreshadows events to come. Go ahead.
What's the name of the series?
Blue Flag.
I've heard about it.
It's really good. It's only 8 volumes long. It's a great manga. It's something else. It's not that. I know what you're talking about, but yeah, no, it's not that one. You're okay. Oh, this one is a fun one. I'm gonna sit right here. Events happening and having a cause and effect gets in the way of your main character. Now, gets in the way of your main character can really connect the dots and showcase new enemies and allies. Before I continue reading that, I will say I'm a huge One Piece fan. It is the one thing I grew up on. It inspires my drawing style. So if any of you go read my comic on Global Comics, you will definitely see the similarities in how I draw and do stuff. Do not think you need to come up with everything before you create the story. Pincer, plotter thing that I was talking about earlier, okay? You can create things on the spot. Popular creators such as Masashi Kishimoto of Naruto, Ichida Oda of One Piece, Hiro Mashima of Rave Master, Fairy Tail, and Eden Zero. You have to add in Rave Master because most people don't even know what the heck that is.
It's such a good series.
It is. Rave Master is Hiro Mashima's original baby. And there are plenty of others who have created last-minute ideas after writing a good chunk of their story. Now, I say that for the simple reason of One Piece. We're just going to take it slow. Join me on my ride, all right? One Piece, we have where Luffy, Zoro, and Nami meet up, and they are fighting Buggy. Luffy ultimately beats Buggy, sends him catapulting, at least whatever body parts he has left. And the other people take his body parts and they run off like, you got our captain, we're going to run. Luffy goes on to fight Captain Kuro. Beats him. He fights Don Krieg. Beats him. He fights Arlong. Beats him. But in the background of that, what we have going on is each chapter cover. This is only for the manga readers in here, but for the anime, I know that they sometimes show stuff for One Piece in the anime. For the chapter covers, they'll do like whole episodes or half episodes. In the background, what we're discovering in the chapter covers of One Piece is, even though he gets defeated and catapulted by Luffy, he gets found by Alvida, who ate the slip fruit, and ends up being like, hey, we both want the same thing. We want to catch this Straw Hat guy who kicked both our butts, and we want to beat him up. He eventually finds his team. In between the Don Krieg battle and the Captain Kuro battle, he finds his body parts. He's like, yeah, we're going to get Straw Hat Luffy. Go to the next one. He eventually meets them. After Luffy beats Arlong, they head to Lobetown, which is like right before the Red Line. That's where Alvida and Buggy find him. And if you're watching the anime, it's fine. It just seems like, oh wow, this Buggy guy came back. I wonder like what was his story. If you're writing or if you're drawing, remember, you can cut away from the main action. I know sometimes it might seem hard and it might seem out of place. Cutting away from the main action to show extra stuff happening in the background is fine. And I say that with writing because I'm giving an example with art, with drawing. But you can do that, and that is an important factor to set up more of your world. And it just helps establish how your world affects your characters. Even if you have kids, it's like dropping your kid off at daycare and being like, man, I wonder what kind of person they're going to be in a couple months. Because I guarantee they're going to be the same, but also different. Now, you got to go with the good with the ugly. Now, this is making things great and bad, speaking on the last thing where it's like, you can go away from your characters and you can come back to them. Remember, you don't have an editor. You don't live in Japan. You don't have to do the same workload for creating your story or publishing, for that matter. We live in America. You don't have to kill yourself trying to write your story, create your story. You can just have fun and create. I know oftentimes we're like, man, we want to publish every week, every month. I publish every month, and let me tell you, whew, I do one chapter, so how anyone else does it week to week, I commend you. But take your time here and there to understand your plant life, your different races, your relationships between different organizations, the races of people, the animals, ecosystems. Where do people find the resources? You just have to understand these things. You have to at least think about them, even if you're not planning everything and you're like me and you fly by the seat of your pants and you're like, all right, we're gonna go plants. Yeah, cool. Okay, they find some sort of plant in the bog downstairs or whatever. You just have to understand these things, or at least be thinking about them. Oh, go back really quick. So this is not a storyboard I did, but these two are storyboards that I did do for my own stuff. This one is a friend of mine who she was allowing me to use her storyboards, and I'm like, it doesn't have to be perfect. If you can't draw but you can write, do it this way. Especially if you're trying to plan something quickly. So, section notes. First off, does anybody have any questions about anything so far? All right, I didn't think so. All right. You got questions, don't be afraid to speak up.
So how do you feel like miscellaneous like world building is like something to start with off, or just like boxes and like here's some fun facts about the world?
So,
Like just like what's out like
I'll give you some context to that. So the question for everyone who, in case they didn't hear it, how do I feel about miscellaneous backstory that happens like in the author comments or in side notes, like you're reading the story and then it's like chapter 1 over and then you flip the page, whether it's written or drawn, and it's like, hey, really quick, let me tell you about this thing. You're like, wow, I'm kind of finding this out in an uninteresting way. Or to some people, it could be like, okay, cool, that's cool. To me, personally, I think that it can be lazy, but it can also be interesting. Here's why I say both. It can be lazy, like if you, let's say something.
for example, it's like, oh,
Okay.
like the plant example is like, oh, the characters are trying to find the plants. Like, here's some fun facts about the plant. Here's its like genus name. Here's like what it's used for.
Okay.
Like other stuff, you know.
If the characters, and that's actually an example I was going to use, if the characters are looking for something, or if they're like going to be searching for something, and it's a big part of the plot, and the author is like, hey, let me tell you about these things really quick in this offshoot side story, I think that can be lazy. Just because it's like, it can be lazy if it's like, I want to tell you stuff before you get there, or it could be interesting if you've already started knowing some stuff from the characters. So like, if the characters are searching for something, and they're in the story saying like, yeah, you know, we're looking for this plant, it's pink, it has the ability to make people fall asleep, if you touch it, you could die, and then we find something else out extra like in the side notes, that's interesting because we already knew some things, now we're learning some other stuff. But it can be lazy if that's all the author is doing to tell us about things in the story, instead of just writing it in a way to where the characters are learning this. Because a lot of times you want your characters to be finding things out at the same time your audience does. Because if there was an alien that came to our planet right now, we're not going to tell them what a phone is. We're not going to go up to them like, hey, you know what a phone is? Like, this thing is amazing. No, they would ask, hey, what's that thing you're using? And you'd be like, oh, this? Yeah, this is my phone. And then you probably won't say anything else about it. And they're like, well, what do you use a phone for? And they're like, oh, you want me to explain? And then that's where it goes. And that's one of the ways that you can, just to answer your question even more, tell someone about like, or that's how I feel about it, is like, it can either be lazy or done right. And I think if you're gonna do it right, you're gonna have the audience find out along the same time with the protagonist or other people in the story. So.
Only when it's like, obviously when it's like stuff like we're gonna have to find out whether it's like elaborate or like just like the stuff like we're gonna have to be able to have right now.
Yeah.
That's not also not supposed to be about like this.
Yeah, you can do it that way. Like if it's not something you but the author has to deem that.
Well, Javon, I wanted to add something to like, so the 3 examples that come to my mind is Harry Potter, Pokemon, and then Demon Slayer. I'll use Demon Slayer first. As I was watching Demon Slayer, at the end, they would come up with like little random things. This is about this trainer. These are about the flowers. You didn't know anything about them, but they just said, hey, these flowers are purple, they do this, they also do this. You liked it. Harry Potter and Pokemon, they're so big that you want to know everything in that world. So it's up to you. How important do you think your world is? Here's the thing, if it took, we have like, I personally have to deal with this. I personally have to deal with this. If I came out with a story and my life is so busy and I have to go to therapy and I have to go to work and do all such stuff and I said I cannot come out with a chapter, I can put down, these are the tatami mats that they step on in the academy. You want something from me. As an author, you want something from me. So since I don't have time to come up with this, Togashi's my favorite person. Togashi, he could come out tomorrow and say, these are the breadsticks that they eat from this island, right? We haven't even been to the Dark Continent, but he can say this wheat is grown on the Dark Continent, and I'll be like, yeah, please let me write this story. But since he has so much stuff going on, we're waiting for him to give us anything. So the thing is, if you're writing a story, you know what's going on in your life, put extra details in it. But just remember, don't be like Akira Toriyama and forget the extra details that you gave us, because like Star Trek and Star Wars, but specifically Star Trek, there's somebody who remembered Cleon. You just created it. There's somebody that remember every keyboard touch. So if you're gonna put details in there, remember your own details, because once your story gets big and you don't remember your own details, we're gonna be looking at you like, hey, that's not how the Starship Enterprise's sound takes off. So just that, you can do whatever you want, just make sure that it's enough and that you care. Yeah.
Yeah, and to that topic, it's like, who are you writing the story for? Are you writing it to make people be like, oh, this story's amazing, this is the next big blah blah, or are you just writing it to have fun? I always tell people, write a story for you. Don't write it for anyone else. It's like with anything you do. You go take a shower because you're like, man, you know, this person said I should probably take a shower every week or every 2 days or every day. Oh, I better change my oil because my friend said I shouldn't, or my friend said I shouldn't. No, you do it because you're like, yo, I gotta get this done. It's the same thing with writing a story. Who are you writing it for? You can write it for people, but just make sure you're writing it for yourself also.
Something that I don't like that authors do in stories is unnecessarily world build in the beginning.
Yes.
Without like introducing, like Narnia does that beautifully. You don't get anything extra with Narnia. You get whatever the character is at. But like something like if y'all seen Divergent, they go into like all the world building and talk about the factions, and it's many stories like that too. Like go into other stuff, but like you don't know nothing about the character, so like why does it matter? So like when world building, adding details, majority of them should be like 90%. It should be like, to me at least, when I watch a story, I like it to mostly relate to the character. You can give me stuff just cause like.
What the ghost?
Back when my friend over here was talking about like plants and stuff, that kind of got my brain thinking of a book series I read as a high schooler, Warrior Cats by Aaron Hunter. It's for like young adults, but what like sprang to mind when he was talking about like plants and like identifying stuff, they have like these like Warrior Cat clans that have like a medicine cat that like heals other cats when they're sick, and so the author takes the story into the like medicine cat like cave, and she's like grabbing different herbs with her paws and like mashing them up into her mouth because they don't have hands, and like it like describes that like these berries are helpful for like hiccups, or these like
Yes.
these plants are like deadly to eat, so don't eat them. And like that's just kind of what popped into my head about that. And like that is good because it's like telling why the medicine cat is grabbing what, or like whatever she didn't grab. And within that same vein, the medicine cat also like tells the other clan cats like what to avoid when they go to gather stuff. So it's really interesting how that is like integrated into the story, and it's not just like useless bits of information.
Yes. I see you up there. To touch on both your points actually, before I hand it off to you. When you give people, and this is what I was talking about earlier for those of you that kind of walked in halfway through, I was talking about me reading webtoons at one point and just you're getting bombarded with information you don't need to know, but at the same time, you're also getting bombarded with like, you don't know anything about the characters or the world. It's mainly like an organization or a problem you learn things about before you get to know anybody else. Like the most stories that I read on webtoons touched on a bunch of information that was like, there was so much information that I didn't even know who the main character was until they showed them, and I was like, is this the main character? And then you find out it's just a supporting cast on his way to the main character's house. You're like, oh, okay, that's cool. I don't really know anything. So there was a lot of useless information. Touching on what you just said, the information you gave to everybody, it's a beautiful thing where, like the guy in the hat, I apologize, I don't know your name, but the guy in the hat, when you had asked about giving information offshoot to the story, it's beautiful when you do it that way. So if you have a character or a cast of people, and I didn't even think about that, so thank you for sharing. If you give like, hey, this character heals people, and then on the like the chapter ends and you're reading it, and then it gives information like, oh, just so you guys know, like this cat who has to break down this medicine and give it to people, this is how they do this thing, this is how they do this, because that's information you might not get in the story, or you might not need to know, or that might not ever come up because you might not have someone outside of that society who needs to understand that information. You might have somebody like in our society, like we know when we get sick, we go to the doctors. If an alien comes to the planet, like, hey, don't you guys just heal yourself with your mingat? You're like, what the heck? No, we go to this facility and they heal us, and they're just like, the facility, what? So there is that. I'll get to you in a second. I'm gonna give it to this person back here because they raised their hand. I apologize. But yeah, so there's that. So thank you for sharing that. That was actually really good. All right, you're up here, everybody. Sorry.
All right. Okay. I just like walked in a couple minutes ago, so I'm sorry if you already went through this.
No, you're
but
okay.
What's your general rule of thumb when it comes to foreshadowing? Because I do a lot of like murder mysteries. And it seems like either I give too much information or I give too little.
Foreshadowing can be a very easy or hard thing. It just depends on what kind of story you're telling. And since you're doing a murder mystery, that's kind of like a balancing act. Like, of course, it might feel like you're giving too much away. And I guess I would need more information in the aspect of, well, I'll just talk about foreshadowing at first. For foreshadowing, I think foreshadowing is it's a tool, much like anything else. It's a device, much like any other writing device. Whether you have I almost said a McGonagall, a MacGuffin, whether you are using a MacGuffin or whether you are using a I said McGonagall. I can't think of it.
That'll come up in the future with us.
But whether you're using a MacGuffin or anything else, you just have to know how to use it. So if you're going to be using a foreshadowing, which is a tool, you have to understand where your chess pieces are. And this is kind of more so the plotter side of things than the pantser, where you are plotting out your story. So I would say any sort of murder mystery that you're doing, I would plan out, not saying that you aren't, but I would plan out like, hey, this is going to be how I'm telling my story. This is the person who murdered this person. Let's try and see where the dominoes fall. How can I foreshadow this in the beginning? Like maybe we just see them at a supermarket in the background looking at this person, and then in another panel, it's another person in disguise, and you're like, huh, that's kind of weird. And you don't pay attention to it until like later, you're like, ha, it was me, the person in the background with the wig at the store, at the supermarket while you were buying peaches. It was me. I switched out. I don't know. Like it's interesting ways that you can do it.
It was me.
Not the Speed Force one. But yeah, there's interesting ways that you can do it. So I would say for foreshadowing, I think you I think it just needs to be, it's just more so plotting than anything else, like really plotting out your points. Like I said, not to say you aren't doing it, but really just plotting out your points. I think foreshadowing can be a hard one if you don't. Because if you don't know what's going to happen in your story or you don't line it up, I think that it's going to be much more of a problem when you're like, how can I foreshadow this? So that's me. I know you had your hand raised.
I realize that the best show always has a certain message to it, but how do I balance that with world building?
So you want to know, how do you balance a message with world building?
That's right.
Okay, so when it comes to world building, like I said earlier, I know you've been here since the beginning. World building is really just figuring out everything about your story. And you, like I said, you don't have to figure out, I always say this, world building is figuring out a lot of things about your story before you at least start. You want to figure out your characters, you want to figure out at least what the problem is that they're trying to solve. And then even from there, you're like, okay, what is it in my world that my characters kind of use? Like, how do they do things? And you want to figure, you were saying, I'm sorry, repeat the question for a second.
I was asking how you balance the two, when to convey themes and when to world build.
Themes, okay. So you can show themes in your world building based on the conflict. I'll say conflict. This gentleman said inner turmoil earlier. So what's your story about, okay, I'll make up examples because my brain's, I have ADHD, so my brain's going at 200 miles per hour all the time. So let's say your world is about, let's say your world is like anthropomorphic people. We'll just say anthropomorphic people. You have dogs versus cats, all right? There's already a conflict. Dogs hate cats. Cats hate dogs. Cats are like, oh, you think you're bigger than us, huh? Dogs are like, yeah, you think you're quicker and nimbler than us, right? And they're just like, yeah, we think we do. But then you have armadillos that come out of nowhere. And armadillos are like, we're armadillos. We're gonna roll up in here and show you guys the land. You can't harm our shell. So the way I see themes is, what is the theme between cat and dogs? It's, if you want to showcase power, cats are more nimble, they're more respectable, they have much more of an elegance. You can see dogs are like eating like pigs, they're like thrashing everything, they're doing whatever, and it's really about putting two things together. So when you're trying to mix themes with world building, what is the problems in your world? And how are your characters in there going about solving them? Those can be where your themes come from. So do your characters need to be more, does your story talk more about patience? Does it talk more about equality? Does it talk more about understanding the difference and being okay, like accepting things? So it really just comes from that. I think that's the perfect part. So just like what I told the person up above, really, I think that's when you want to kind of map out your story a little bit more if you want to have themes. I never put themes in my stories just because my brain can't comprehend themes, I feel like sometimes. But there's that. You have a point?
Yes.
He has a logic going. I'm going to hand the mic over to my buddy.
We talk all the time, guys. So me and him talk about this stuff all the time, and the most important thing in all of this thing is because we live in a world where if you can get some controversy and do some things, you could get big. So what I want to say is what my lady tells me. When you get in the kitchen, find the onions and the meat that you want to use and the sauce, and then go look up a recipe. So she was talking about look, I don't know. We heard that someone was talking about murder mysteries. Find your favorite author that does murder mysteries and follow their recipe. So it's here we go. It's simulate, then stimulate your brain. So simulate your favorite author. So one of the things is you can use foreshadowing to a character, and at the end of the story, it had nothing to do with anybody in the character. None of the characters in the story. It was because the whole thing was you like murder mysteries, so you were sitting trying to figure out the whole entire time. I haven't even come up with the character who did it yet. One great game that is one like a good murder mystery is Disco Elysium. You go throughout that whole story watching this guy just make shells of himself. Very great game. Yeah. And then when you get to the game, you think you figured it out, and it had nothing to do with anybody on wherever you were. But that was that style. So for the individual who was talking about themes, find the recipe. What conflict do you want going on? What message do you want? Because now that you follow the recipe and you know what you want to eat, I like Chinese food, but I always try to spice it up. I like to be creative. But first, I have to find the recipe, follow that recipe, learn that recipe. So simulate. and then I stimulate from there. And so the most logical thing to do is, because it's your recipe, and at the end of the day, we all want to be loved. So if I create a story, of course I want people to like it. I'm not going to create this Star Wars thing and then be like, I didn't care that anybody didn't care about that shit because I want to do it. No, I want people to love it. So find somebody, find these things that's already been done. Like he said earlier in the beginning, everything's been done under the sun. Star Wars has already been done, but Star Wars sticks to one part of the thing. I wanted to talk about this because it was another answer. I don't want to take it from. But the biggest thing that we're stuck with is that we are watching billion-dollar companies do billion-dollar things, and we're like, we got to create the next Avengers. We got to create the next Star Wars. We have to create the next Game of Thrones, right? Because remember, at the time, George R. Martin could have told us that the sand in Westeros is red, like we were talking about the thing, and we would have been like, oh yeah. Now we're like, we don't. Since you're not going to come out with your book, we don't want to hear anything about the House of Dragons. Like, I don't want to hear about the House of Dragons. I don't want to hear nothing about nothing, because when you had my attention, I'm like a woman. You were in my heart, and now you're done. You're gone. I can then never let you back in. Now you will come back in if you do a good job, but I'm gonna give it back to the man of the hour. Find a recipe, use that recipe until you now know that you're good enough to stimulate your own thing. Just work with that. A lot of things we don't, I'm going into coding, and what I'm realizing there's a website with people that have code up there already. I don't have to come up with new code. I just want to have clean, consistent code that works. What we're doing is we're trying to reinvent the wheel when the wheel was already invented. We just want to make the story better. We want to put an ice cream machine in our car, right? But if the car doesn't drive and it doesn't have a good engine, right? I'm not usually logical like this, but you're trying to create a car, but you don't have the engine working, and you're like, hey, I want to put an ice cream machine or a cooler or a shower in here. The car has to work first. So my logical thing is find someone that already did it. For me, Hideo Kojima makes. When I get done watching playing Metal Gear, I'm like, the world is messed up, nuclear war, right? But you know who gives a lot of unnecessary details that don't need to be given? Hideo Kojima. And guess what? When you get done playing Metal Gear, you're trying to be like, oh, why was this sand like this? Why was it like this? So that's the whole thing. Make sure the car works first, and then put the extra attachments on. So find your favorite person, find the recipe, make sure that the vehicle can drive itself, and then go from there. All right.
No, I appreciate that. Do you still have your question?
No.
Ah, dang, I was trying to get you.
Hey guys, the sad part is, Javon said this same to me like months ago when I was going on this panel is basically our conversation of what you call it. So like a lot of this stuff he's saying, he told me this, not the way that I said it, but he taught me this like probably 6 months ago when he was looking at those stories. So like, just like I said, there you go, man. There you go.
Before I get into this, so to finish up with what we were saying about your question and even you, pay attention to your favorite story. Like I said earlier, look at your favorite story that you enjoy and see what themes you can pick from it and be like, how did they do that? And then go back from the beginning and study that. So, for both of you.
Alright, so I don't know if there's a specific term for this, but my favorite stories are ones that have protagonists who are very flawed. Think Light from Death Note. Starts off with good intentions, but delves into a whole new world of power.
Isn't that deconstruction or deconstruction of Ed, you said it. We both
yeah.
Okay, yeah. Deconstruction
or even Breaking Bad with Walter White. You know, has good intentions to to save his family, ends up destroying it in the process. How do you create protagonists who are flawed without the story, without the protagonist getting too jarring or too unrelatable, and to keep the story fresh and innovative?
This is a good question. I think it's all based on the perspective of where you start. So earlier I said that usually we want to start with characterization. Go to the next one. I don't even remember what it was. We were talking about so much. Okay, so yeah, this is pretty much the end of this part. I was going to ask you if you guys got questions anyway, but we're doing pretty good. Okay, we're good on time. So pretty much to answer your question, how do you create a flawed character that isn't pretty much relatable in the story,
yes,
correct?
Without it getting too
deep?
Not too deep, but too jarring. Yeah?
Okay. So let's talk about. We'll talk about Death Note. We'll use that. Has a lot of people in here seen Death Note?
Spoilers.
If you haven't seen Death
Walk
Note,
out now.
watch it. I mean, that's fine too. Ask the next time you go to Taco Bell, be like, hey, have you seen Death Note? If they say no, just drive away.
No, it was a movie about them ordering Taco Bell, and it's like, well, why would they be ordering Taco Bell now? It's like the blue screen and the red screen. And he's like,
I've seen the live action where like people have done the writing things so perfectly. I don't understand it. Ah, you got it back. Okay. I'm gonna answer your question, but I'm gonna let her go first.
Yeah, you should
Remember
answer.
your question, please.
Well, no, you have to answer because if she says
I know.
something,
That sounds like
it's gonna be weird.
Don't forget what you're gonna ask. Okay. Pretty much to answer your question, I think you should focus on story. I think if you don't focus on story, if you want to create a character who isn't as relatable, but they're kind of like more of like an anti-hero, I think at that point you can focus on your character, but it's gonna be hard because you're gonna be like, what's the problem that this character has? So we all know somebody in our life who's pessimistic. Okay, you can't cheer them up. Most of the time they're happy, but they seem like they just hate everything. If you want to create a character like that, what's the problem that that person that you know has? Is it something with the world? Is it something with an organization? Is it something with a place or a body of people? I think those are the things that you should focus on first before adding your character and dropping them in there. Because if you create like the world or you create this established thing that they don't like or that they have a problem with, and it drives them to such a way to be like, I'm thinking on the extreme side of things, but not right now, but you can see it like in their character. Then when you drop them in and you say like their family or anything else has a problem with that, you're like, oh, this person has a problem with X, Y, or Z because this thing has been affecting them for so much time. And I think that your character has to either not be affected by that and then it's kind of a build-up, or that character is going to be already somewhat affected by that thing, whether it's a person, place, or item, and then it's like they're starting to topple over, because you always want that character to topple over at some point to where it goes from sanity to insanity. And it doesn't have to be extreme, I guess, but it can still be like, oh wow, this person is not okay, like they just did something and they don't really care about anything. If you want to take it back to Naruto and Sasuke, like Sasuke got like that when he didn't care about Karin or Karin or whatever, when she was like saying, hey, you can bite me to heal and you can like take my energy, and he just like, he would do that and he'd be like, all right, I don't care about you, go. And you're just like, yo, what is happening? Like, dude, you are getting crazy.
And
That's
Sasuke
kind
is
of
the
a way.
coolest person. The Uchihas are the coolest thing in that story, but Sasuke just
Yeah, I don't know a single
dropped the
person
ball on
who
certain
wants the
things.
eyes. Okay, now we're gonna go here.
So going back to like story building and foreshadowing and stuff, I think like some also really good ways of storytelling are when you know absolutely nothing. Like there's a part in Death Note which I won't like outright say in case anyone hasn't, which I agree you should. I got almost everyone in my work to watch it. Like where something happens and then you have no idea what's happening until then afterwards light goes through everything that just happened and you're like, oh
no,
yeah, and I had no idea this was happening. There was like barely any foreshadowing. Or in like Black Belt, Book of Murder, there's like a big mystery that happens and at the end they just go through it, and it just seems like, what would be like a way to make that happen where it's like they don't tell you or foreshadow anything, but that when they finally do, you're like, oh, all the pieces were there the whole time, but like it wasn't like in a tasteful way.
The One Piece. I want to know what the heck the One Piece is.
It's like I feel like the Death Note one is like,
You know
all
for me
right,
it is.
I'm gonna do this, and then I'm not gonna tell you anything else, and then it's like, sir, you never told me any of these things, but it all makes so much sense.
I just want to know what the One Piece is.
Don't say anything yet. Don't say anything yet. I got this. So you literally asked a question that, okay, so let me explain the story first. I watched Death Note when I was younger, but I didn't remember anything. I had no idea. And like, this was like 2021, so like the tail end of like when COVID was like going down. And I was like, you know what? I'll watch Death Note. And I was asking her about it because like she, like Death Note and Fullmetal Alchemist were like her first two like loves. And I'm thinking to myself like, oh, you know, I'll watch it. That scene that you're talking about, I jumped out of bed and I was like, my mind was blown. Because I was like, what? I don't remember this. So
one thing, and then there's like 15 million other things that he did too.
So a way to tell, and I'll kind of explain this so without spoiling certain people. Basically, something happened in the story where they come up with a plan. Now, in most stories, whether it's live action or TV or animated, you don't know anything about like you'll always see that like a character will come on the plan like, okay, so this is what we're gonna do, and then you'll see it play out. In this particular situation, you didn't see it play out. It just happens. You're like, okay, they made a plan, but like, okay, something happened. What I think you can do is you can subvert the audience's attention. I think you need to give them enough story so that no, they don't forget about the events that happened, but yes, they are entertained by something else. So that whole time we were entertained because the two people that weren't supposed to be close were getting close, and like that, it's almost like when you have the hiccups and they say put your fingers together, but don't let them touch. You're so focused on one thing that when the other thing happens, you're just like, dog, I knew this was gonna happen, but I completely forgot about this. So I think you need to make the audience forget about what just happened. I know, I see it, I see it. I think you need to make the audience forget or just make them pay attention to something else. Kind of like back in the day when they were like, is this dress blue or gold?
Oh my God.
And you're like, oh man, is it blue or gold? I don't really know. And it's like, you make enough people pay attention to something so obscure or something so different that when you're writing your story, it's almost like they're just attached to this thing. So even if you, and this is a way of foreshadowing. If you foreshadow something in the beginning, let's say you make a character really strong, and then 30 chapters later, they lose all, but then you give them something else to pay attention to on the side of that, and you're just like, oh, it's kind of interesting, like, I really like this. And then all of a sudden, you're like, but you know that person's gonna get their power back. You're like, how are they gonna get their power back? Then their power comes back in a way that's like that. Like, I think writing that is really crazy, because like, writing something like that is really crazy, because like, you just have to know a little bit about your world. Everything always usually goes back to world building for me, because like, you can't just have a character and make a story with this character without writing them interacting with something in the world, no matter what it is. And I think that's like the key point.
I have one thing to end this. It's about endings.
If you please remember your question. Please remember your question.
No. Okay. I just thought about this. He gets this all the time. I'll call him at 2 o'clock in the morning, like, hey, dude, what endings? Because stories need to end. If you don't end your story, if we never find out what the One Piece is, I tell him all the time it's his favorite. I was like, I want Ichigo Oda to die, so we can never know what the One Piece is, and it goes down in history as the greatest anime of all time. Because if he fumbles that One Piece, if he says the One Piece was the adventure you had the whole time, I haven't watched it yet, but I'm gonna go find him and beat him up. But so my favorite ending. My favorite ending.
One Piece is the friends we made.
No. Yeah. My favorite ending is Logan. Because as we're talking, we have millions of years of what Logan is, what Wolverine is. And as we're watching the movie, he's like, I don't want to do this anymore. Good job, he's coming back. But that movie was fake. Great, because you remember you said something about them losing their powers. Wolverine lost his powers. He was like, man, dang, you getting beat up right there, Judge Jack. Then when he got his powers back, he was like, please give him the green stuff. Right? And then it ended. But it ended so well. That wasn't a superhero movie. It was a movie with superheroes in it, and it ended so well, you were just like, yes, like bravo, right? And so the most important thing is make sure, because we could come up with the most fantastic story. There's a one game, and I don't want to spoil it to you, that I was having so much fun. I was playing Bayonetta 3, and I was like, oh, this is my game. This is my game, I love it. Oh, this is my Bayonetta. And the ending killed the whole entire thing. So I don't even play the ending. I just go back to the beginning of the game and be like, oh, look at this combat. Look how powerful she is. This is my wife, if I can marry her. But then every time I play the ending, I'm like, I don't even know if I want to buy the next game. I don't, So make sure with all of these stories that you're coming up with an ending that even if it's not like this big thing, it ends on, Berserk, not gonna end. Hunter x Hunter, probably not gonna end. What's that samurai thing? Vagabond. We knew how it was supposed to end, but it never got to end. And the thing is, you have fans around the world who are sad, so don't, endings. We're talking about stories. Stories have to have endings. Endings are very important. I don't know what to tell you. I don't have the magic formula endings, but yes.
No, you're not wrong. All stories must have endings. Some endings we're not happy with, some endings we are. We can all come up with examples of stories that we are like, yo, this is kind of weak sauce. Still good sauce. I enjoy sauce, but it's kind of weak sauce.
Making you get your steps into that.
Hey, I'm telling you, I'm getting my steps, exercise, everything. I appreciate you.
So when we were talking about like that plot that just absolutely blows our mind with
Yes.
little foreshadowing, it actually brought like, this isn't my question, but I wanted to tie it in. But it made me immediately think of this might sound controversial, but the ending of like Promised Neverland season 1, where the plot is happening in the background. You can physically see it, but you're so focused on like 2 characters that you can't see it, and that just absolutely blows my mind. And so for my question is, how would you balance like I said, I write murder mysteries, but I have tons of characters, but I don't always have the time to meet every single one of them, only the important ones. So how do you manage fleshing out all characters but still maintaining like the flow?
First off, I want to comment, if the ghost allows me to. Thank you for coming. I appreciate you.
Hey, can you shout yourself out how you spell it before they leave? You have people looking for you.
Oh, martial arts?
Yeah, spell it out real
Marshulartz. I spell it in a very special way. My dad's last name is Marshall, and my last name is Harris. He always wanted me to have his last name, so after he passed away, I took on the moniker martial arts because I am an artist. So, appreciate you all for coming. Thank you. To answer your question, first off, The Promised Neverland, if anyone has never seen it, watch it. It is good. It's on Netflix. Don't watch the second season, but the first season, lovely. The second season just it just deviated from the anime. It just did like a 180 and was like, nah, we're gonna go our own way. But The Promised Neverland was really good because what they were saying up top is that in that show, I can't even say it if people haven't seen it. Pretty much, there's stuff happening in the background, but you're so focused, just like what I was answering your question. What is your name? No, you're fine. What's your name?
What?
Sir? What's your name?
Sydney.
Sydney. So, like you were saying earlier, like how do you like write a story that's like? Sorry, I didn't mean to like bother you, but like how do you write a story, but also like have something going on that just wows the character? Like what they were saying about The Promised Neverland, how you see the characters doing stuff in the background, and you're just like, man, I hope that like these 2 characters make up and are like cool by the end of everything, but like that's just a ploy. And then you're just like, oh my gosh, but like you won't notice it if you've never seen the show. I promise you, I'm not ruining anything. But like, but you know, it's pretty good. But yes, so you have a lot of characters. Let's think about Bleach for a second. Bleach has so many characters. So many characters that I couldn't even tell you who does what half the time. Who they are, where they're from. They're just there. If you have a lot of characters, I think the best thing to do is in your story, let's say you've already started your story. You're about, I'll just say 100 chapters in. You're like, I got about 70 characters. I've never introduced them the way I wanted to. How do I do that? You have to start giving them purpose in the story. And maybe not purpose, maybe don't give all 70 of them purpose in the story at the same time, because that'd be crazy. Give like 3 of them purpose in the story. Make them interact with you. If they're not a part of your main cast, which I hope all 70 characters are not your main cast, that would be crazy. But make 2 of them, or even 4 of them at a time, important to your story. And you can have the other characters kind of be the supporting cast of those characters to start off with. I think that's very important, just because if you give your characters purpose, people will have something to tie them to. When people don't have characters to tie them to, like, for example, you guys may not remember the panel. You guys might remember me because I'm an airhead. Or you guys might remember the panel and not remember me because they're like, I don't like that guy, he was too energetic. But like, you will remember something from this. And that is my goal, is to get one of you to remember something. So with your characters, you want them to remember something. Most stories you read, a character has a quirk. Not talking My Hero Academia. But a character has a quirk. Something that they're either wide-eyed and very high energy, or I'm that like edgy character who always looks back and says, leave me alone. Like, you remember those characters. And that's what I would say, make sure your characters have something to identify with. Especially in a murder mystery. Because I'm going to say the person who's shy is probably the one who did it. They did that for sure. They're just trying to avoid attention. That's all they're doing. Get my steps in.
So, how do you take character archetypes and make them, memorable and not cliche? cause this Yuji main character in Jujutsu Kaisen, he seems like a complete energetic, optimistic shonen hero. So, how is he faring well?
This is going to be my opinion to your question, but I will try to remain open. I'll give you my opinion first. I like Yuji Itadori. I think he's a very interesting character, but he does hit that shonen archetype where he's like, I'm gonna save the world. Don't worry, guys, I got it. And you're just like, all right, dude, we've seen you like 30 other times in these other anime. But like, I think when it comes to, it just depends on what genre you want to make or what subcategory you want to do. Do you want to do isekai? Do you want to do shonen? Do you not even want to do any of that? And you just want to like take certain tropes from there? If you're gonna do tropes aren't bad. This is bad. That's not true. That's not true. You take tropes and you just make sure that you write them well in your story. If people can see certain things, then you can start playing tropes in their head. So let's take Itadori from Jujutsu Kaisen. Let's just say, right now you see him as this goody two-shoes. Like he's this guy who's like, don't worry guys, I got you, I'm gonna save you. You right here? You're with me. We're gonna go retrieve this thing. We're gonna go save this person. But then by chapter 46, he stabs him in the back and he's like, Sukuru Nai. And you're just like, what the heck? He just spoke Japanese and stabbed me in the back. What's going on? And it's like, you just don't see those things coming. So if you already know a trope, and this is the beautiful thing about knowing tropes and being able to see them, you can easily flip them on their head. A lot of people don't realize that. If you three are going, have a good one. I appreciate you coming out. But if you literally have a trope that you see and you're like, oh, I know Itadori's trope, write down what it is, and then you can be like, oh, okay, he does this, he's like this is his personality. And then you can easily flip that on its head and be like, but I'm gonna make him evil, or I'm gonna make him good, but he's only good to satisfy these needs. Outside of that, he's this way. So that's the way I would take care of it.
I have another recipe for you guys' story.
He has another recipe for you guys.
It's really easy, because everything we're talking about here all got our attention. Yes. So the most important thing in stories is attention. You know the one character that got my attention and I hated him the whole entire time? Killmonger from Black Panther. And I hated him because there were certain things I was like, oh, as a black African American guy, why are you getting the magic? And then all of a sudden being angry. And I was like, this is the Arthur's way of saying that I'm an angry black man. And then later, I was like, Killmonger's the coolest person in there. But you know what that got? It got my attention. I hated him. I'm gonna be controversial here. Hitler has our attention for some way, some way. And so the reason why I'm using these controversial things is because it has our attention. So if you have to use tropes, a corny trope, you have to use the protagonist. As long as you can get that attention, that's good. Midoriya from My Hero Academia had our attention because he cried too much, and then all of a sudden now he's like, I don't care about nobody. Gon, we were just talking about that. Gon was the most happy-go-lucky shonen guy ever until we found out that Gon is crazy. Gon is crazy. Like he out of his mind, and we didn't realize that until he had to be pushed. So what I want to say is, it does not matter what your story is. You want to, JR, whatever. She has our attention, doesn't she?
Oh, the person who made
JR talk like Harry Potter, the game. She got our attention. How many people still play that game? How many people are waiting for her to say something stupid so they can sit there? So what I'm trying to say is, when you're writing these stories, don't worry about whether it's corny. Don't worry about this. What attention are you trying to garner to this character and to your story? You could come back later and say, hey, Hermione was black. Right? I wouldn't mind if she was. But, you can do anything in these stories. You just want the person's attention. You are doing murder mysteries. You want to grab their attention and throw it off the trail.
Yeah.
You were saying, hey, how do I write this? We just want people's attention. So whether that's that we're being corny and taking tropes, whether we're being controversial, whether we're doing anything, the most important things about these stories when you're writing them is, how do I get people's attention? Now, I personally wouldn't be going around trying to just get controversial attention, but you just always want people's attention when you're writing a story. There we go.
And I think to answer your question a little bit more and to talk a little bit more about tropes, when you're writing something like a murder mystery, like when you're writing something like a murder mystery, everyone is going to be looking for the moment you start saying like, this person did it, because it's easily going to turn from like who done it to, okay, now we found out who done it this time. Now we're moving on. Okay, who's going to be the murderer this time? And I think at that point you really have to play with like how you're doing things. Like you throw a curveball and do like a love story for like 36 chapters, and people are just like, there has not been an inkling of murder, but in the background there has. This character who showed up, who never gardens a day in their life, showed up with gardener gloves and tools. What are they doing with that? It's just different ways that you can do this. Like, people are always going to expect something, especially with my story being a shonen type story. They're like, okay, this person's going to be doing this, but I literally have amazed people the last 2 chapters, because like the first chapter they're like, oh, we weren't expecting this at the end. Then the second chapter they're like, okay, we have no idea where the story is going. We thought we knew, but then we didn't. And it's like, it's really just about establishing something in the beginning and turning it on its head by the end. And it doesn't have to be every chapter. You don't have to wow them every chapter. It's just a way for you to tell a story and be like, okay, how can I eventually make the audience think that they know what's happening, but you don't know what's happening. It's like telling somebody when like somebody's like telling you about yourself and they're like, hey, you with the glasses in the back, Jack, I seen you get cupcakes and cookies downstairs, you cupcake eater, and you're like, you don't know me, bro. You don't know that I like this. It was a one-time thing. That's how you tell a story. You can tell a story the exact same way. Make somebody think they know you or your characters or your story, and then get them.
Subvert them.
Subvert expectations. So.
But again, like I said, you want people to be like, I know what see, because the thing is, if you're sitting here reading my story for 10 chapters and I know what you're going to do, well, you just read my story for 10 chapters. And I still got you, and you're waiting for me to do something. So like I said, to me, the biggest thing is this attention thing. And again, you have to remember, guys, I want everybody in this room to remember this. We're going to go out for the next 10 years. We talk about this all the time. We got a podcast, by the way, but I'll let him shoot it. But we're going to go watch Marvel movies for the next 11 years. With old gods. Thor is an old god from Norse mythology. The Hulk is taken from mythologies, and we're going to watch their stuff because we like power fantasies and we want to see what they're going to do. Marvel has our, matter of fact, Disney bought everything that I did not want them to buy. They bought Marvel, they bought Star Wars. I'm waiting for them to buy anime. I'm like, they're going to buy my favorite anime pretty soon. They bought everything, but they have our attention. We're not sitting. We talk about this all the time. They came out with, they had a lot of controversy, but they came out with She-Hulk. I told them I turned my brain off and enjoyed the whole thing. But guess what? People were watching it, but She-Hulk had our attention. And then they definitely got my attention when they put Matt Murdock in there. That's my favorite. That's my dude right there. The Daredevil, that's my guy right there. But they had our attention. And we were the ones online. Like these big phenomena, like I said, the problem is with the storytelling that gives us anxiety is that we're dealing with multi-million-dollar companies that have the resources and magic and psychology that they can find out what we like and what we are indie. That's a cool word, right? Indie, not amateur. Indie. We're indie. We're amateur indie guys going up against guys with billion-dollar things. They can mess up something. You can't afford to mess up something. So the thing is that you have to go into this and how can I get this attention? Realize that Walt Disney buys The Little Mermaid. If you could do your research, The Little Mermaid was already told. All those Disney stories were already told. He just said, hey, I want this for the kids. And then he was putting all types of things in there. But look at what Disney is, and look how weird he bought Marvel. And now he's giving me a comic book of Spider-Man, which I've seen since the 60s, and I'm waiting for the Spider-Verse, even though I've been reading the comics forever. I'm now waiting on Wolverine to show his first debut in the MCU. So it's all about there we go. I don't know, man.
I will kindly correct my friend in saying that the opposite is true.
All right.
Not
join our podcast because this is what we do.
Not everything you said, but just the part where if you're an indie creator, amateur creator, you have all the room to mess up. These $1 million companies, they put out any sort of show and it flops. That's like millions of dollars lost.
Okay, I agree with you.
So that's the only reason.
I agree with you.
But like, you guys can literally like everyone in this room could be like, they can make a comic or a story, put it out on Wattpad, Tapas, whatever. Get like 100 views and you'd be like, it's a wash. Toss it out. You spend zero money. I mean, you probably spent some money, but you spend like, we'll just say $100. These companies spend $1 million putting these stories out. So never feel pressured, anyone in this room, to be like, dude, if I don't create this good story, I'm gonna lose hundreds of thousands of dollars in my bank account right now. It's just gonna be bad.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I'm gonna be able to eat my soup, go to Starbucks, or get my chicken nuggets from my favorite Dino chicken nuggets from the store. Like, it's just gonna put me out. Like, no, you'll be fine, but like these other companies can't do that. But I mean, that's pretty much the end. You can easily do all this in any program: Procreate, Clip Studio, Paint, Photoshop, Paint Tool, Sci. You can have like dimensions for your webtoons or anything like that. And I didn't really go over that because I didn't feel like anybody like was like asking about specifics. But I just basically what I wanted to do with this panel is, and what I hoped I did, was just invoke thought. I wanted to invoke thought and just show you how easy it is to create, because as someone here who does YouTube, who works on video game stuff, who does a podcast or two with him and other people, I do a lot, and I do so much, but it's easy to do. It's hard to maintain, but it's easy to do. All it takes is your cell phone to do any of these things. I run a company called Lumebento that I create my comics with. I have 2 others. One in the Philippines, one in Spain. One person draws his comic on his phone. Yeah, I couldn't believe it. He does it with his finger, and it's beautiful. If I don't have any imagery up in this slide, I should have put it. No, we can't work magic with that. But like, if I had it, I would show you. I think I'm gonna do that for my next panel. But he does all of it, and he just finished chapter 1. My other guy does 3D modeling, and he's telling his story in 3D modeling way. And I'm just like, this is beyond what my tiny brain, lizard brain, can handle. But it's amazing. And like I was saying, I inspired them to do that. That's all I want to do with everyone here, or who was here, is just inspire them to say, look, take what you know, do what you want to do. It doesn't have to be drawing or writing. It could be anything. You have, especially in 2023, man, we have so many elements, so many websites, so many programs, so many people who are doing it. And yeah, so to answer my question yet again, are you smart enough to create a story? My answer is always going to be yes. Thank you for everybody for coming, and you guys have a good rest of your day. I know we're finishing early, but that's all I got, unless anyone has any questions.
Can you go back to like the second slide that
No.
shows your YouTube handle?
Yes.
To view?
Once we click through all the animation.
You press 2 and it goes back.
Oh.
There we go.
Hey, my YouTube handle. No, yeah, that's my YouTube handle. You said you had a question though? Oh, statement.
About the, oh, she's still here. About the girl talking about murder mysteries.
So the reason why I explained all that stuff at the beginning was just because it's never just going to be one avenue that normally gets you going. It's going to be one avenue that normally gets you going, but then from that one avenue, you can actually do other things. So with your murder mysteries, there are hundreds of thousands of people who are afraid that they don't know how to write murder mysteries. I guarantee you alone could be like, hey, welcome everybody. Let me teach you how to hate your content. Be like, they don't know what they're talking about. There are gonna be people who love your content. We're like, wow, this content is really good.
But if you have their attention, it doesn't matter whether they hate you or love you.
Exactly. Because, oh, sorry, go ahead.
You mentioned earlier that I don't have to have a theme like the one like the ones presented in has no older to make it to still make it big. How do you do that?
I think there's stories, and I can't tell you how to make it big without having a theme. I think there's stories that I've read where people read into things, and there have been, for example, let me explain this.
I wish I had to.
Everybody knows X-Men, right? We all know X-Men, Wolverine, Cyclops, all that. People are always like, oh, this is Malcolm X, and this is who's the other guy? Martin Luther King. Sorry, I don't know history that well. This is Malcolm X, and this is Martin Luther King. Like, Xavier is Malcolm X, or Xavier is Martin Luther King, and Charles is Malcolm X.
Other way around, dude.
Oh, other way around. I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you for correcting me.
We had to get him real quick.
But they say like, oh, Stan Lee created these characters to be a political for this. Stan Lee has debunked that, and he's like, I just created these people because I didn't want to really. He's like, no, Stan. I believe it's when Stan Lee says that. Stan Lee said
Captain America was created to be a Nazi propaganda
no,
thing.
not that. No, that's not what I'm talking about.
All right, that's a whole different. Yeah, go ahead and do your thing.
What I'm trying to say is, Stan Lee, when he created the X-Men, he didn't want to give them backstories, but he wanted to give people like cool powers. And they were like, oh, we're gonna, like, this is really what this is about. That's not true. Stan Lee has since debunked that, and other people, like Jack Kirby when he was alive, has debunked that as well. These characters were just created to be awesome, cool, and have, he was like, I'm lazy and I don't want to write backstories on how these people got their abilities, so we're just gonna say it's a genetic disorder or whatever. So that's pretty much what it was. But later on, people oftentimes find themes in writing because they're going through something, or something is going through their mind at least, and they start relating to characters or situations that characters are in, and that is when people find themes and they go online, or they're like, dude, you gotta read this story, like this story showcased this and this and this and this to me, and then somebody else reads that and be like, yeah, you know, I see that, but like, it doesn't feel like that's what the creator wanted. So a lot of times, you don't have to go in with a theme, not that you shouldn't, you can or you don't have to, it just depends. If you don't go in with a theme, I guarantee you, you will start taking things in your personal life and putting it in there, and that in itself can create a theme for people to relate to. Because there's someone who's gone through what you've gone through, or who's going through something similar.
The other thing is, since you don't have a theme, you are the theme. So you are the ism. So you're just creating. And then later on the line, they'd be like, this is his style. This is his uniquity. So you are the theme. Since you don't have a theme, you just put yourself out there. And where we live in now, somebody will be like, I did a 1 hour video on why this is so unique, or this. So just throw yourself on some paper, or throw yourself on a mic, throw yourself, and you are the thing. This is your unique, like I said, Hideo Kojima. Now we like, oh, this guy is so intelligent. But back in the day, we're like, nah, man, like, we're like, nah, man, like, what was he trying to do? But now we're like, okay, they have hour-long documentaries of why Solid Snake is so cool. I found out Solid Snake was just Reese Spoon from Terminator. Then I found out later that Solid Snake was G.G. Pliston from the John Carpenter movies. But now he's Solid Snake, big boss. So you don't have to do anything. All you have to do is create, and later on in the line, as long as you keep doing it, somebody will come up with a theme.
Yeah.
Somebody else would do it, and then I'm like, this guy is a genius because he did this. Like he was saying, if this is true, which I don't want to argue and debunk, that Jack Kirby and they came out. But look what we think about Wolverine, Magneto. Look how we think about it. If he's saying I just did this, look at the attention that we gave to, like, look what we did. Look what Thanos. Thanos wasn't cool. Look what we did to Thanos, and we're like, this guy's cool, and just like, and this is stuff Javon taught me, so I'm really just taking his stuff and making it look cool. Throw yourself on some paper, throw yourself on the mic, throw yourself in whatever medium you like, throw yourself out there, and eventually when it all comes down in the wash, somebody will create some themes. Because at the end of the day, I'm gonna go ahead and keep it real. I just want your attention and your love and your views and monetary things. I don't care what you think about the character. I just want the character to make me money. I just want the character to be loved. I just want to go down in history. Isn't that not what Greek philosophy and Roman philosophy is, to go down in history? Are we sitting there looking, like I said, like, we can go on a whole different panel, but Homer's Odyssey, they teach us that in school. And all I want is to go to later on when I'm 50 years old, they were like, the character that Yusuf and Javon created is being taught in school. That's what I love. Wow, but that's it. Do you think Plato or whoever wrote this was like, I can't wait, the Cyclops, like, Cyclops and Odysseus and Zeus and all these things that are being used to this day to create new characters. Until the human race is done, they're gonna take Odysseus and make him whatever way they want. All you want is your name attached to it. You want to be like, I took my time and created the ghost of auditorium, what you call it, right? Because we can all make a story off the ghost of auditoriumness, and all you really want is that your name attached to it. You want people talking. You want to listen. You want to be sitting right here and be like, hey, did you really mean this? And you're like, no. Right? That's all right. You just want to be down here. I'm speaking to our egos. You want to be down here and be like, did you mean this lofty spiritual? No, I wasn't thinking about it, but that's a cool idea, right? That's all you want to do, right? So just go in with that spirit. I want to be sitting down here at a panel and inspiring. I believe in inherent good, even though I'm like jaded and I believe in inherent good. I just want to inspire the next generation. I just want to sit here, like, I'm happy that he did this, and we're sitting here to talk because we get to talk about what we love, and that's what you really just want to do. So don't worry about themes. Don't worry about any of this stuff. Just take what you love, influence what influenced you. Find out what influenced you, study it, grab some ingredients, find a recipe. You like murder mysteries? Find the best murder mysteries. Conan, what's the anime? Conan the Detective? They write that in one episode. Do you like that?
Villain of the day type
Yeah.
stuff,
What do you want to do? Because I can tell you right now, you said murder mysteries, and I want to go home right now and write a way better murder mystery than you, right? And I don't even like murder mysteries, but I like the media, the content. I like anime. So like this is, I don't know, like I said, this is Javon thing, but me and him, this is all we talk about. Don't worry about it because we're all in this amateur indie state. We just want to make it to where we can do a little bit of something and just go do it. Because we don't care. You just want to, like, you would love to be sitting on the internet and be like, did my character, he's LGBTQ. No, he's not. He doesn't like this. You want people to put stuff on there that you were like, I didn't put any of this, but this is nice. Just sitting there scrolling, drinking coffee, going, this is so nice. I didn't mean any of this, but hey, this is fantastic.
Yeah, it's just about discussion. I think a lot of it comes from just discussion.
You want people to discuss, and then you want it to be like, if you get famous in your ideas, I want him to be looking at my comic and I'm like, I have to write the new Star Wars, and then he gets online and he's like, but he should have did this and he should have did that. I'm like, oh yeah, he should have did this. This is what you want, but you're not going to get it if you're scared. If you're scared to put yourself out there, if you feel like you can't do this, you feel like I got this disability, I got that, I'm too scared, I'm too shy, if you don't do it, somebody else will. Yeah. That's the one thing that we talk about. What my biggest anxiety is in this whole thing is if I don't get out here and do this podcast, somebody's gonna do a podcast with my flavor. Somebody's gonna be me. And then when I come out to be me, they're gonna be like, you just thought, our thing is, both of our name is actually Javon. But imagine if Javon goes out and does everything, they're gonna be like, you're just being Javon. What's your name?
Isaiah.
You're being Isaiah. All because I was too scared to get out and do what I was gonna do. And when Isaiah comes out, he doesn't even know me. But when he comes out and does my exact content that I'm sitting at home by myself trying to write out and too scared to put out, what's gonna happen is when I do come out, oh, you're Isaiah like. And that's all this is. And I mean, if Isaiah dope, you gotta be humble and be like, hey, but he's sweet though, so hey, where's that? A lot of people are not like that. But like I said, like this is stuff he taught me for a whole year. Everything I'm saying is what he taught me for a whole year. Get out and do it. Make mistakes. Because guess what, like he said, he taught me this. You can't erase a paper that has nothing on it. You can't re-edit something that's not there. You can't be compared to somebody if you're not doing it. You can't be compared to Shakespeare if you never wrote. You cannot be compared to anybody. You can't even be you know what you said, and we got to talk about this. You aren't even in the discussion because you haven't you ain't even in the discussion. Because you didn't put yourself out.
That goes back to what I was telling Brendan earlier. It's like, me and Brendan now know each other. But before this panel, we lived completely separate lives. We had our own separate problems. We had our own separate things going on in life. But now he's somebody I can be like, hey man, how's it going? Like, have you recorded your voice yet? Have you done this yet? And he'd be like, I haven't done it yet. Or yeah, I put some stuff out. I actually got a gig going in like a couple months. It's slow, but it's happening. It's like, oh cool, like that's good to hear. He might tell me he opened up a cupcake factory. Who knows? We all have goals we want.
Don't become our friend because you'll be ever known as Cupcake Man.
Yeah. No, but it's very interesting, and I really ultimately applied, and this is just I'm gonna end everything here. I applied to do this panel at 6 different cons, and this is the only one I got accepted at. Every other one was like, hey, we know we're doing we know we're doing other types of panels like characters answering questions in cosplay. We know we're doing other things like reenactments of scenes from anime. But your panel that's educating people, that can get people thinking, that's not really what we're looking for. That last part at least is true. I don't know about the other stuff. The other stuff is just like what I've seen. But this is the only panel I got accepted at. And I was nervous that I wasn't gonna get one. And I'm appreciative because I was able to do this and I was able to meet and talk to everybody who was here, everybody who came in later, and everybody who's currently here. And I appreciate everybody. My goal is, I don't know if I'm going to inspire all of you. I don't know if I've gotten everyone in here to think. Hopefully I haven't said anything that has harmed anyone or offended anyone, because we know what kind of world we live in nowadays. But my main goal is to inspire, because I have had her, I have had people like him, and I've had people like just other people who have inspired me to be myself, first and foremost. To feel comfortable with doing YouTube. I mean, I was always an outgoing person, but to be comfortable and be like, dude, people are gonna hate the sound of my voice. I'm gonna mess up, I'm gonna goof up, my art's gonna look crappy one day, but look beautiful. Like, it's just all those things we tell ourselves, you know? You have to be able to work past those so that way you can do this, because this isn't hard. It's work. It's not hard. And that's where I'm gonna end it, so I appreciate everybody who came. Thank you once again. And yeah, hopefully see you next year. Appreciate it.